And welcome back, everyone. We have another season to debut today. It's season 6 of ATSU's Lunch and Learn. Thank you all for joining us today. And we have a jam-packed show today. I think we have a record number of guests, so this is going to be really interesting to kind of figure out. But also, we're introducing a new host today. So in lieu of Brian Kruznick, who can't join us today, and also Joe Vincent, we have a new host that's going to join us for the rest of the season, and that's Kirsty Gaither. So everyone welcome
Hi,
Kirsty.
everyone.
Excellent. And Kirsty is the director of the ETDC over at ATSU's Mason campus. So everyone give her a big shout out, welcome. If you haven't emailed her already, be sure to flood her inbox. So going back to our session today, we are going to be talking about women in healthcare, right? And to kind of talk about that, let's give you a couple stats, a little friendly stats here. So the first woman to graduate medical school was Elizabeth Blackwell, so that's kind of a cool thing. The first woman to win a Nobel Prize in physics was Marie Curie, and the first woman to earn a doctorate in dentistry was Lucy Hobbs. So I thought it would be fitting to introduce some guests here today that are impactful in today's landscape of women in healthcare. So we'll start with our guests today, and directly across from me we have Dr. Margaret Wilson, Dean of A.T. Still University's Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine. And then to her right, we have Alice Allenson, who's a staff pharmacist over at Hy-Vee Pharmacy. So thank you so much for joining us today. And then to my left, we have Dr. Melissa Stewart. She is a professor of microbiology
That's correct.
at A.T. Still University's Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine. And over via Zoom on the Mesa side, we have Tanya Sheeran, who is the assistant professor over at the Arizona School of Health Sciences. And to, I guess, Kirsty's left, this is so interesting to navigate. Kirsty's left, we have Dr. Hanan Tomei, who is a CCU director over at the Arizona School of Dentistry and Oral Health. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. So, before I do that, I gotta give out a couple shout outs here for a second. So, if you wanna view our show, there are 3 different channels to do it. So, you can go to the live stream, and that's right here, as you can see, live.atsu.edu. And then from there, you could also check us out on Facebook, like us on Facebook at its.atsu.edu/FB. And then, of course, you could look at us on YouTube in full HD, great quality. I don't know if you want to, not this necessarily, but whatever you want, at its.atsu.edu/YT, right? So be sure to check out those channels and subscribe to us. So without further ado, I'd like to kind of pass it along to Kirsty. And Kirsty is going to, I guess, start the panel for us.
Yeah, so we're super excited to have such a diverse group of incredible women here today. And I'm looking at these two, but also out in Kirksville. And so the first question we really wanted to ask all of you was, what does being a woman in healthcare or even academia mean to you? So thinking of your experience either as a professional or as an academic and an educator, sort of what does gender mean? What does being a woman mean in your experience?
Let's jump right in.
Okay, well, I think that as women, we are, just speaking to some of my colleagues over the years of, say, the demographics of the dental schools, like, some of those colleagues who have graduated maybe, say, in the 80s, some of them had as low as like 10% or 25% women in their class versus, we have 50% in the dental school this year. It may even have broken 50, where the majority is actually females, which is really amazing. So I think that, it's almost, if our students have that kind of representation, the faculty, and it's important to have that same representation in the faculty. And it's also more representative of, the larger society and the workforce as well. So I think it's a big part for us to be like role models for those students, because sometimes they, it's easy to just assume that, oh yeah, the males have been doing this for forever and everything's easy for them. Sometimes there's more to juggle for women when they're full-time workers, whether it's healthcare or other professions.
Definitely. I'm actually part of a profession that is more, or has been historically more predominantly women. I'm an occupational therapist. And so we're seeing a little bit of a shift in the opposite direction, more men coming into the field, which is really great. But my my years as an occupational therapist has allowed me to have so much flexibility because, like you said, there are a lot of challenges as a woman, mother, working, and I've been able to really juggle that because of this occupation.
Kirksville, any changes you've noticed?
Well, I can say I'm probably the most mature person on the panel here. That's a nice way of saying I'm the oldest. In my graduating medical school class, there were 10% women. So it was certainly unusual for women to be in medical school when I was a student. And you know, it's been amazing to watch that change over the last 35 years to how it's grown and changed and doors have been open. You know, we certainly face many challenges as being a gender minority during those years, but I think also hopefully my generation helped open some doors and brought about some changes that made it easier for women to choose a career path such as this. So a lot has changed. There's still some things that haven't changed, but I think women bring something certainly extra to clinical practice, to academia, to leadership positions, and bring a perspective and maybe a different leadership style that I hope is beneficial for everyone.
My father was a pharmacist and graduated in 1960 from KU. And in his class, there were 3 women, 2 of which were nuns. So in my class, I graduated in 1984 from UMKC, and we were more 40% women to probably 60% men. And we still had the challenges, you know, getting hired at certain positions and things. We still battled a little bit of that gender. But I agree with Dr. Wilson that we've made great strides. I think the newer classes are 50-50 or even maybe even shifting more towards women in pharmacy. The nice thing about pharmacy was at the time, which was really appealing, was that we could have our family and still work and do all that, but it also created more challenges because you had to juggle all that. So made great progress though.
Very good. Well, I just recall that in graduate school at the University of Missouri-Columbia, I was the only female graduate student in a very small department that had 12 male graduate students. But really, I have to say that I had to think about it because it didn't really make that much of a difference to me at the time. It didn't seem like I was the only female graduate student. I mean, we were all friends, and it really it wasn't detrimental, the fact that I was the only female graduate student. And of course, coming here to KCOM, the basic science faculty is largely male dominated. But again, it's such a collegial group that it really hasn't made that much of a negative impact at all as far as my ability to interact with people and to do my job and to serve the students as I hope to do. So it may be the fact that I'm single and don't have a family that I need to take care of in addition to, you know, my professional duties. So I think that certainly women that have families and children are at a disadvantage. I do recall 25 years ago when I started here, it was illegal to ask me whether I was married or had a family, but I do recall that the person who hired me, who's since passed away, loved him dearly, but he did ask some of my references. Number 1, did I have a boyfriend? Number 2, did I have a husband? Is there any possibility that I'll be leaving or having a baby soon?
Wow. Wow.
So even though it wasn't overt in front of me, it did happen, but it didn't impact me because the answer to all those things were no. I don't know if it would have made a difference if the answer had been yes to any of those things, but that was 25 years ago. That was an entire generation ago, so things have changed.
So Dr. Stewart and Tanya too, you both touched upon a little bit about sort of work-life balance. And I hate to sort of ask because I do feel like it's a problematic question to ask sort of in and of itself. But do you find yourself trying to pick career choices, or sort of how do you juggle work-life balance? How does that present in your career choices or choices as practitioners?
Well, it actually came into play from the very beginning because I chose my career as an occupational therapist because I knew that it would allow me to be flexible. I was already engaged when I went to graduate school, wanted children. So it has allowed me that ability to juggle. However, it seemed to always fall on me in terms of when the kids are sick, what are you going to do? Who's going to call in? Well, that would have to be me. And my husband traveled a lot. So we just really, it just became a juggling act throughout, every year was different. Who went to what school, what activities. There were nights when I felt like I was in the car till 10 o'clock. But, yeah, maybe not that late, but how about you, Dr. Joy?
Yeah. So definitely it requires consistent effort to juggle and balance everything that's going on in our lives. My husband is able to be actually a little bit more flexible with his schedule. So if somebody's sick, actually, he's usually the one that stays home.
Nice.
Because he's on the computer and he can do his work being an industrial engineer from home sometimes. So sometimes it doesn't work out, but generally he's the one that's going to do that. I also have chosen to come back to Phoenix where I grew up because my parents are here. So my mom has been a great support. So I think that, every situation is going to be unique. You have to come up with a situation with a scenario that works for your life and your resources so that you can not completely, keep up with what you need for your kids and your family. I think, as a practitioner, I chose dentistry because I said, I don't have to take call. My father is a physician, so I thought about medicine for a while, but I said, you know what, I don't have to take call, so I don't want to do that. He used to spend, he's a trauma surgeon, so he would stay 24 hours at the hospital, like every week, a couple of days a week. And so that got tiring. And I saw how my mom had to pick up the slack for that when he was on call. So, I wanted something in the healthcare professions. Dentistry seemed to kind of work for what kind of a schedule I thought. Now teaching in the academic world, it has been a little bit more challenging because when I was practicing in private practice, I was actually an associate. So I didn't have, the pressure of this is my practice. I have to make all the management decisions. I have to run the business. So it was kind of like just do my time and leave. But here in academia, it seems, I have to spend extra time with students' treatment planning. I have to prepare coursework. And so it actually ends up being more work than if you would just be an employee at a private practice outside. But, if you enjoy it, you find ways to juggle things and make it work for your specific situation.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that having, we've had this growth of women in healthcare and in the health professions has really shifted this idea of work-life balance for both genders. Again, traditionally for medicine was very much, it was all about work and very little about life. and I think when women started entering the profession, those kind of issues were addressed. I know for myself, when I took maternity leave, my partner at the time, who was a male, he took paternity leave. We covered each other and we took call and covered each other so he could take paternity leave and I could take maternity leave. So I don't think that might have happened, a generation before for him, but because of, trying to seek some middle ground for all of us.
Well, I would say that if you go into research, you're pretty manic about the whole thing. So at least when you first start off in a research area, you work at least 6 days a week, I would say. As I've gotten older, I've tried to pare that back a little bit. I do still feel guilty when I come in at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, and my male colleagues have been here. But, in the morning, I've been cleaning my house and mowing my lawn and all this good stuff. They always make a joke, and it's a sexist joke, but they say, everyone needs a wife. So I think it's more the effect of being a single person and not having a partner to help with the domestic duties, more so than just being female. Because if a fellow had a household to maintain himself, it would be the same situation.
That would be.
Excellent.
Sure.
Okay, are we going to a commercial now?
Yeah, so what we're going to do right now is transition to commercial. Now, Kirsty, I think it's my understanding that you interviewed Dr. Bacon during this segment. Is that correct? Yeah?
Yes,
Excellent.
I definitely. Dr. Bacon, she's in athletic training.
Awesome, excellent. Okay, so we're going to cut to break for now, and we'll see you on the way back.
I'm here today on the Arizona campus with Dr. Bacon from the Athletic Training Department. What is the beverage that gets you through the day?
I'd have to say, since it's fall, pumpkin spice latte.
When you're thinking about research, do you have research assistants or are you a lone ranger?
So I wouldn't necessarily say research assistants, but I love to collaborate. If I could cheat and say research collaborators, I would go with that.
Perfect. So this one, you're going to have to think for a second. I want you to describe your current research project in only 5 words.
Employer perceptions of DAT graduates.
No time on this question. Okay, good. How did you get interested in your field?
You know, I've always been interested with how the body works, especially when, it goes through an injury. And the field of athletic training kind of gives you that immediate problem-solving sense to try to figure out what's going on with the body when an injury occurs.
Another time limit. In 3 words, why perform research?
Body of knowledge.
The librarian in me likes that one. Best research time for you, night or day?
Probably day. More productive, for sure.
Who was your most memorable mentor and why?
So I'd have to go with Dr. Bonnie Van Boonen at Old Dominion University. She was my PhD mentor, and we actually, to this day, still collaborate on probably a good majority of the projects that I'm working on. Published. We wrote a textbook together. We had funded grants together.
What would you do if you were given $1 million to spend on any research project you chose?
It's a great question. So thinking about the projects that I have going on right now, a lot of them are survey-based or qualitative in nature. So I don't have to be locked down to any one location. So I'd probably say if I had $1 million, I would take my research team and my equipment, fly to an exotic island, rent a house, and conduct our research from there.
Has your research brought you any surprises?
Yeah, I don't really know what research doesn't bring surprises. Honestly, I feel like if you're not surprised, then you weren't doing something right. So yeah, I think there have been a lot of surprises from all aspects: methodology, participant responses, data analysis, just the findings.
What brings you the most pride?
In terms of research,
Anything.
I'll stick with research. You know, I really enjoy teaching students about the research process, and over the years, I've had students who've graduated from our master's program and have pursued PhDs. It makes me really proud to see them start to become successful researchers in the areas that they're most interested in.
Can you drive a stick shift?
Yes, I can drive a stick shift. Do I think you should trust me driving your car if it was a stick shift? No.
All-time favorite book?
Ooh. I think the first one that comes to mind is Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett.
All right, last question.
All right.
One piece of advice that you would like to share with future researchers?
I probably have to steal a common phrase and say, don't judge a research design by its cover. Meaning that there's no one research design that's easier than another, and I think particularly with qualitative research or even survey research, people tend to think that they're really easy to conduct, and that is so far from the truth. So until you actually get to experience that methodological design, I wouldn't judge it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And welcome back to another edition of ATSU's Lunch and Learn. Thanks again for joining us today. So today on the docket we have a category about women in healthcare, and we actually had a couple of input from our viewers and some notables, some other notables of women, important women in healthcare. There's Joyce Nichols, who is the first female physician assistant, and also Sue Falsone, who is the first female head athletic trainer in major professional sports. So both have ATSU ties, and both are super important in the history of women in medicine. So without further ado, I'd like to kick it back to Kirsty, and we're gonna start to talk about, or continue our panel with our guest here today. So Christy, take it away.
Great. So we had just ended where Dr. Stewart was talking about our experience not having children, not having to juggle that, and our other panel guests, it's talking about how you plan families and careers. And I thought that was a really good sort of segue into talking about stereotypes about women in healthcare. And so I wanted to ask, are there any particular stereotypes that you're aware of, maybe don't see, but you've heard about? And would you like to change them? How would you like to correct them? So this is sort of your chance to address them, change maybe stereotypes you've heard.
Well, as far as pharmacy goes, I would say our stereotypes have actually improved over the years. There again, many, many years ago, for me to go get a job as a woman, if there was a man that was also up for the same job, it was very difficult to get that job. Generally, the man usually got it. Anymore in this day and age, I don't think that's the case. I think we've broken a lot of those barriers. I think it's all based on merit and skill and experience, and we're seeing quite a few more women than what we used to.
I think what Dr. Stewart alluded to earlier, there's still a little of that. I think it's changed tremendously, but certainly the stereotype in my era of being a young physician was that, women were not going to be long-term committed to the profession. They would get married, they'd have babies, they would leave the profession, or they weren't going to be available to be on call and to do the full spectrum. And I think we proved them wrong, that we were fully engaged and committed to our profession. And I think that, again, has benefited probably both genders as that's evolved. But, there's still a little of that out there. And there's pockets and maybe particular specialties where I think there are some hesitations perhaps as choosing a female resident over a male resident because are they going to be as fully available as what the perception is their male counterpart might be.
I think that I experienced a little bit of reverse bias, I guess. When I was first offered my first postdoctoral position with the USDA, one of my colleagues, one of my fellow graduate students actually told me, well, you just got that job because you're female. So I think that was a little bit of reverse type of bias. I told him that I got that job because I was well qualified for it and I could do the work. And that was echoed by the fellow that actually hired me. So sometimes I think it can actually be seen as working in your favor to be female, even when it doesn't. That usually is a position taken by males who want the same job that you do.
I do want to have Tanya address one specifically
Okay.
that I've heard where patients are concerned about women not being strong enough for sort of some of the manual therapy that you have to do. Because I know we had just discussed a little bit about the wear and tear it has on the body, so maybe you could.
And it does. So as an occupational therapist, and I think I can speak for physical therapy too, it is a very physical job depending on the setting that you're working. As a young graduate, I was working in inpatient acute care. I was doing max assist patient transfers, and you know what? I could do it just as good as anyone else, all about body mechanics and proper technique. It does get tiring, and I think that is a risk in this career and in terms of longevity. So now, as a more seasoned clinician, I'm not sure I can go into the hospital and do 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week of that sort of heavy transfers. But my career steered toward outpatient. I'm a certified hand therapist. So what I've loved about my career is that there was always something more I could work toward, another goal. And yeah, I loved being a certified hand therapist, and then that segued into now my position as a assistant professor. So I guess in my mind, I am educating the new crew, the young crew, to go out there and forge on with the heavy lifting.
I think that there's a stereotype in dentistry that is a very technical skill, and it's kind of, you have to kind of have a carpenter or an engineer kind of person, like mindset or skill set maybe. And I think that, women, I think are even within our own profession, with our colleagues, are having to either try to overachieve or work very hard to prove that they are as good, if not better. I think sometimes with some of our patient subpopulations, they come in thinking that, where's the doctor looking for a male? I think that still does happen in certain populations. And I think that women in general, from what I've seen, are doing their best to totally put those kinds of challenges aside and prove that, I'm not going to be less of a worker. I'm not going to be copping out because I have another commitment. Find other ways to get support from people so that they can stay committed to the profession and not have to compromise on the required performance.
Now, since we're talking about women and Kit's mentioned quite a few famous ones, I thought this would be a fun time to sort of let you each pick a woman who's maybe influenced you. It doesn't have to be historical, it could just be a mentor, and give them a sort of a brief shout out so that you could recognize them, maybe say why you would pick this particular woman. So Dr. Tomei, maybe?
Yeah, it's going to have to be my mom for me, even though she was not a healthcare provider. She was tirelessly working and always pushed me to do further my education. She got married young. She had 2 years of college when she got married, left, had grown up in another country, came to the States, went back, I think 3 or 4 times to get her bachelor's after, and then every time you leave education, you lose some credits. So she'd go back and she'd have to retake courses. And I mean, the amount of effort, I think we calculated it in the end, she took 11 years to finally get her bachelor's because she kept losing credits and having to read. And she always told me, this is the number one thing, don't worry about anything else, get your education, and then, we'll manage for how to supplement everything else in your life. And so she has really been, and my father, but you wanted a woman. So I mean, come on, they affect us too. The males affect us too.
They do.
Yes, they do. So definitely between the two of them, it was just really the support and pushed me to do what I could, the best that I could.
Tanya?
Well, I'm having a hard time thinking of one person. I'm thinking about every stage of my career. There has been a really influential colleague or supervisor that has just allowed me to shine or pushed me somehow toward the direction that would, give me a little bit of an edge, or, you can do this, you can go for that certified hand therapy designation. So there's always been somebody very influential. And then I like that you said your dad, because I feel like my husband has been such a support my whole career, because he was there before I even started my master's program. And he's my best cheerleader now as a new faculty. So,
Dr. Wilson?
Wow, it's, as the other said, it's really hard. Obviously, got to give lots of credit to my parents who raised me as the only girl amongst all boys in the family to believe that I could be, anything they could be. And we were all raised very equally with the opportunity to, get a good education. I remember going when I was about 8 or 9 years old, going to the library and getting the biography of Elizabeth Blackwell and reading that. And that planted a little seed also, and so there's so many of those women out there that inspired us.
I'll jump in here too. I would also say my mother, who started off in nursing school in KU, and she and my dad got married and had my brother, so she had to drop out. And so many years later, Truman started up their nursing program in '73, and so she was in the first class in the nursing program there, graduated top in her class, and my brother and I were both teenagers at the time. So she had to work really, really hard. Ended up becoming a school nurse, was the Missouri School Nurse of the Year one time, and she was just really an inspiration. And of course, I worked also for my father, who was a pharmacist since I was 14. So really, I'm kind of like the others. It was really a good influence of both of my parents, but my mother showed that you could do this as a woman. You could work hard and have your career and have your family too.
And I think we have time for one more, so Dr. Stewart?
Well, my parents, of course, were a big influence, but I'm going to give a shout out to my sister, Michelle. She is a practicing veterinarian who owns her own practice in Columbia, Missouri, and so just the fact that we all come from humble beginnings. My folks actually don't have college degrees, but they were always very much in favor of getting all the girls educations, at least a bachelor's degree. After that, you were on your own. So,
Yeah.
but Michelle, she's done really well as a business person, and she's an excellent veterinarian. And so, I think that she's a very good example of what a person can be when they go all out.
Excellent. Perfect. So I think with that, we're going to cut to our next commercial break. And it's interesting. So we're introducing a new segment here, and it's what we appropriately titled Java with Joe. Interesting enough, Joe's not in this, but he will be in future episodes. But we're going to be talking to Lisa Archer, who is the director of the Dreaming Human Patient Simulation Lab over at the Interprofessional Education Building here in the Kirksville campus. And we'll see you right after.
I'm Lisa Archer. I'm the Director of Simulation and Performance Assessment at A.T. Still University. I'm also the Training Center Coordinator for the American Heart Association Training Center that's located right here on KCOM's campus. I started at ATSU in March of 2014, and I have loved every minute of it. My office is located in the Interprofessional Education Building at 500 West Jefferson on KCOM's campus. So I'm a registered nurse by trade, and I've been practicing in healthcare for 30 years, with my most recent experience at Northeast Regional Medical Center in Kirksville, Missouri, which is a wonderful partner for KCOM's campus. One thing I like to do for fun is to sing. I love to sing. I love to take my dog for walks around Thousand Hills Park. It's beautiful. And I love eating dinner on my patio with my husband and my son. ATSU is a fantastic learning institution, and so when I came, I didn't really see a whole lot of things that needed to be changed, but some of the things that we have brought to realism is having students come in on a more regular basis to do simulations, and so the clubs have really embraced that, and so that's been kind of fun bringing the clubs in. And we're getting ready to introduce an immersion room, which is going to surround our students with the sights and sounds of the real scene, and so it really raises the fidelity of our simulations, and I think the students are going to really love that. We have 3 projectors mounted from the ceilings, and they are short throw projectors, and they shoot video production on the walls, and so when you walk into the room you feel like you're stepping into the real scene, and it's all recorded video. So they'll be on 3 different walls, and so say we've got a sports medicine club that's wanting to do an asthma attack on the football field, so what will be projected on the wall is the sights and scenes of an inside a football stadium, for example. Or Wilderness Medicine Club will have sights and scenes of the mountains or the lake or some babbling brook around them, and a patient's gone down during a hike, and so they have to take care of that patient in that setting. So it really just raises the fidelity of the simulation. It's gonna be really fun. Our immersion room, and it's definitely, you can see in the beginning phases, but we have the walls prepped and the surround sound in place, and so we have 3 projectors here that are ready to go up into the ceiling, be mounted, and then we'll be able to project the sights and sounds on the wall that really make students feel like they're fully immersed in the sights and sounds during their specialized HPS lab experiences. So this is my control room, and so we have 15 rooms, and everybody stands outside, or all of our fellows sit out here and run controls for the simulations that are happening inside the room. So they know as much about the simulation as we do who write it. So it's a very functioning lab with computers and controls and mics outside of every room. This is our control center, And so we're able to see what's happening in each individual room, including our big classrooms and debriefing rooms across the hall. And so we can run all of our simulations from this particular control station, or each room can have their own individual simulation going on with an individual instructor in each room. But we're able to control it from this control center. It's kind of cool. So this is one of our 8 3G simulators that we have here. It's the current generation of high fidelity simulators through Laerdal. We have 8 of these guys. One little fun fact is that each one costs the school $60,000. So we're very blessed to have them. The number one question that I get asked is, why does he wear sunglasses? And that's because their pupils constrict and dilate. And so while they're under the lights, when the machines are on, their pupils are constantly constricting and dilating, and we've blown a motor, and they're like $8,000 a piece. So if we put sunglasses on them, that's a $4 fix as opposed to an $8,000 replacement. So that's one fun fact. And then we have a lot of real things in here that are real hospital kinds of settings that help our students to become familiar with the sights and sounds of a real clinical setting. So real ER bed, real crash cart, real defibrillator, and the patient monitoring looks pretty real when it comes up, so they're able to go through their simulations and be exposed to real stuff that they'll be experiencing when they get in the clinical setting. Kind of cool. This is our junior simulator, and he is like an 8-year-old child. And so our pediatric club is going to be working with them, and we're going to be moving our pediatric lab into here, doing some different things in here with Dr. Julie Hessler. And so we're pretty excited about that. And this guy really likes his ATSU ball cap. Vicky is our birthing simulator, and she has had 527 babies since September of 2015 when she came to KCOM. She's sleeping now, she just had a baby, so I'm gonna sing a lullaby to her. Lullaby and good night. Oh, wait a second. She's asleep. Let's go see the baby and sing the lullaby to the baby. Lullaby and good night. La 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 la.
an
Oh, I
even
love
bigger.
that. That was incredible. Lisa Archer is absolutely amazing. She's a natural. She was born for the camera. So I think we need to have her in one of these lunch and learns one of these days. We definitely need to do that. But yeah, we had a super jam-packed episode of Lunch and Learn. And I just wanted to thank our guests once again for coming along. But I did want to give another shout out to ways in which you can view this Lunch and Learn. First off, we're going to go with the live stream. So that's live right here in this lower third you can see. I love doing this, by the way, in case you couldn't tell. So live.atsu.edu. And then you could also view us on our Facebook page. That's its.atsu.edu/FB. So make sure you like us there. And then finally, to see us in all our glory and in HD, you can check out its.atsu.edu/YT. So make sure you subscribe and check those out. So right now I'm going to give it right back to Kirsty, who's been doing an amazing job as our host today. So Kirsty, please take it away.
Great. So you definitely don't want to miss our next Lunch and Learn. It's going to be on October 10th at noon Arizona time. And it's on open enrollment, so you know it's going to be thrilling. And we're going to be here with the Human Resources Department. So we wanted to give an extra special thank you to our guests, especially for sharing all of their experiences and stories. Dr. Wilson, Dr. Stewart, who had to step out, and then Alice in Missouri, and then Tanya here with me, and Dr. Tomei. So thank you all for sharing again. And then we also wanted a big thank you to our backstage crew. So over here in Arizona, we've got Ann Ackard and Draylon Vang. And then also in Missouri, you've got Corey Stanford, Jean Vonald, and Bob Bevel. So a huge thank you to you two. It wouldn't happen without them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. That pretty much wraps up our show. Be sure to check us out on the live stream, Facebook, and YouTube, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks again.